And today we'll be talking about preventative pest management practices. Thanks to Gina Bella Kofer. She is the Sustainable Solutions Agronomy Manager for Organics at Wilbur Ellis. She graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, where she earned her bachelor's degree in crop science. She went into the pest management field as a pest control advisor and a CCA on the Central Coast, working at Earthbound Farm. That's where I first met Gina. I was a graduate student, and was managing one of the fields where I was doing a trial. So it's fun to be here with you, Gina, and continue to see where our professions take us.
Yes,
Gina is
absolutely.
passionate about organic and sustainable production and has been a leader in the field and pioneering the education and adoption of these practices for over 3 decades. So we're so lucky to have you here. Thank you, Gina, so much for agreeing to take the time out of your busy day to share with us what you think and have learned over these many decades of working with growers and being a PCA and TCA. So I'll hand the mic over to you, Gina.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Margaret, so much for having me and Aparna and all the UC researchers that are dedicated to organic agriculture and moving it forward. Margaret gave my introduction, so I don't need to belabor that. But I do want to move into, let's see, I'm trying to move my slide and let's see, down at the bottom. Okay. So I do have some sad news to report. Israel Morales Sr. Passed away this morning at 9:47 a.m. He was an organic pioneer on the Central Coast, the Salinas Valley, and was my mentor. So I started in as a PCA, 35 plus years ago in the Salinas Valley, and it was very conventionally minded. And I had my aha moment, working with pesticides and ran into Israel, and he really mentored me, all through my years. And soil health was his passion. He was fortunate enough to work with Louise Jackson back in the late 80s, early 90s when she was a UC Extension advisor on the Central Coast. And she shared with him all of her knowledge, and he just took it and ran with it out in the field as a large scale. He was a conventional grower, but also organic grower, and just really, really respected in the industry. And we really lost a giant in organic agriculture today. And I just wanted to let everybody know that he passed away peacefully, with family all around him. And he just lived a full and amazing life, but he did leave us too early. Just wanted to let everyone know, and please send prayers and good thoughts toward the Morales family. And, just thinking back about, how Israel was passionate about soil health, it really did frame how I approach pest management because as any good organic pest control advisor, we realize that, you're never going to spray your way out of a problem. We just don't have those types of tools to do that. Even in the conventional world, we really don't have those tools to spray our way out of a problem anymore with resistance and just losing those synthetic tools, which is a good thing in my opinion. And it makes us really have to dive back into um, the nuts and bolts of how soil health can build a healthy plant. So, it is a complex system. Um, but it is the foundation to a successful pest management program. Um, so I just want to talk about how within the rhizosphere of the plant's roots, those microbes, the microbiome, lives within that root zone. And we can help influence what those microbes are by what we feed the soil and how we take care of the soil and how we till the soil. Israel was a really big advocate of conservation tillage, and he was able to um, turn a crop with 3 passes versus the normal 8 passes that growers in the Salinas Valley will do. So, conservation tillage, keeping roots in the ground, but really microbes are influenced by the carbon and the nutrients that are added to the soil. And then, so their populations are really influenced by what they eat. Microbes thrive in the soil that have good structure, high organic matter, good nutrient content, soil not compacted. So again, that's where the conservation tillage comes in. And then, really good irrigation management. Microbes live in, um, an environment that they don't like it when it's waterlogged. Otherwise you really get those anaerobic microbes that we don't want. Or if it's too dry, they just desiccate out. So they're living, breathing creatures like we are. We, can't survive underwater or in a desert without water. We need that right amount of water to survive. So same with microbes, right? So that's why irrigation management is so important when we talk about soil health. And then organic matter, that's the foodstuffs of microbes. So the more organic matter, the more stable and diverse the microbial population in creating that resilient soil that can withstand stressors such as drought, such as flood, and then what we're here to talk about today, pest. So, we want a stable and diverse microbiome that has many species of bacterial and disease, many species of bacterial, fungi, archaea, earthworms, and soil-dwelling insects that can create a disease-suppressive soil. This is where the good guys can outcompete the bad guys and help plants send up their defense mechanisms, right? We want that plant to be able to trigger its defense mechanism, which plants have. They just need the tools to be able to be triggered. And then this is just a simple graphic that I kind of like to show, the rhizosphere and how the root system is influenced by those microbes, be it beneficial, neutral, or, pathogenic. But there's just many benefits to the microbes in that rhizosphere, mineralizing organic matter in the soil, increasing nutrient availability that builds a healthy plant that can help stimulate that, those to the defense mechanisms, stimulating root hair and plant biomass, helping plants to tolerate stress, again, be it pest, and then producing polysaccharides and that help to form soil aggregates and oxygen exchange sites. So again, microbes in the soil are super important for a plant's immune system. And those microbes can help trigger a plant's defense mechanism. And you just think about, our gut, right? And our gut system. If we have a healthy gut, we're able to cycle nutrients and, generally be pretty healthy. If we have a gut microbiome that is not beneficial, if we've been on antibiotics and you haven't taken probiotics, the effects of, wiping out a gut microbiome. So it's really similar in the soil. And this is, few years ago, 5 years ago, we weren't really talking that much about the soil microbiome. This is really something that has come to the forefront now more in science and agriculture. And, thinking about, back to what Israel was teaching me 30 years ago, it's like, people like that were ahead of their time. And weren't really listened to. But now it's like, okay, this is super important, and we need to listen more to what our plants are saying, and they want healthier foodstuffs in the soil so they can, you know, be healthier and produce these defense mechanisms, so we don't have to spray as much. So what are some of the common carbon sources that will influence the soil microbiome?
I I
Is
just,
there a question?
I just attempted to join today, just ask, but
Oh, I think somebody's
I
not
never
muted.
contacted by like the different people. That's it.
So,
Yeah, I'm like, I don't
right.
remember.
So organic matter in
Maybe
soils is really important. And then some of the common carbon sources that can influence the soil microbiome. So really cover cropping is the number one organic matter that you can get into your soil. Organic matter with available carbon. So that's residue that breaks down. And then it's also that cover crop is roots in the ground. So, taking in and through that photosynthetic activity, those roots are putting carbon into the soil also. And then, the amount of carbon that we can get into the soil is dependent on uh, termination and timing and method. And, organic cover crops increase water infiltration, water holding capacity, reduce soil erosion from wind and water, can be a great refuge for beneficial insects, which is, a lot of times overlooked. But, if you go out into your cover crop during the winter, you'll see a myriad of beneficial insects out there. And then also, outcompete weeds. Whereas if you leave a field fallow during the winter, you can have a bunch of weeds, and then you go in and do an herbicide application, which can then disrupt your soil microbiome. So if you can do a cover crop to outcompete the weeds, that's great. And then leach out salts, and then just a lot of other benefits to cover crops. But I realize cover crops are another crop during the winter, and it costs money, and it takes your crop out of production for a period of time. So some growers, aren't able to do a cover crop, and that's understandable. But if you can try to at least rotate through every couple years to get that ground cover crop, the benefits are huge. Another carbon source is compost. Great addition of organic matter and nutrients, and then also microbial populations, but also dependent on, your rate. If you're only putting a ton out per acre, it's like a drop in the bucket. Um, and then your source, right? So is it a green waste where you have a higher carbon and nitrogen ratio, so it ties up your nitrogen, or is it manure based where your nitrogen is more available? And then also, you can't be trucking compost that far, so it's really important to find a good local sound source for compost. And you want it to weed and pathogen free is really important. And then just fully composted, because I've seen a lot of issues where growers have put on not fully composted compost, and there are other issues than that happen in the soil with that. So just really know your source, and make sure it's a really, reputable source. And then also dry pelleted fertilizers, another great source of carbon and organic matter, along with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sodium, and then the other micronutrients, just dependent on what that organic pelleted fertilizer is. Is it a 442 that's mainly a chicken litter, or do you have meat and bone meal in it, or feather meal? So know your carbon to nitrogen ratio on your dry pelleted fertilizer, and understand the release rate of that nitrogen. And then also kelp is a great source of carbon. And then also thinking about how kelp grows. Some kelp, like the Ecolonia or the Macrocystis, it can grow 3 feet a day. So the amount of carbon that it is sequestering out of the environment is really great. And then you're taking that carbon that's been sequestered out of the environment and putting it into your soil. And there's a lot of other benefits with kelp. Biochar is a super interesting carbon where it's like your forever carbon, where it stays in the soil. It's not really a food source for microbes, but it's more a refuge or a home for microbes because there's a lot of pore spaces within the biochar. So it's a place for microbes to live and survive within those pore structures. So it's like the home for microbes. And then also there are local sources of biochar. There are different companies that are taking, large, well, trees. I know locally along Highway 101 in the Rocks area, north of Prunedale, they're taking out all of those eucalyptus that are really dangerous along 101, and they're doing biochar there. So there's a lot of different opportunities with biochar, and instead of just wood chipping and putting them out as mulch, people are starting to do biochar. And then there's nanohuman, which is an extremely small carbon molecule that aids in the delivery system for soil and foliar applications of other products. And then humic acids, which are large carbon molecules that have a high cation exchange capacity that has many soil benefits when applied to the soil. And but those results are then dependent on solubility and quality of that humic acid. And then I just want to talk about humic acid really quick because my company sells a humic acid and it is kind of that low-hanging fruit of it's an easy carbon to get a hold of. It's easy to apply. So if you can't cover crop and if you can't compost and you don't have the ability to put on these other types of carbon sources, humic acids are kind of the easy button for carbon. They are sourced from Leonardite ore, so they are a mined material, but they are insoluble. So it's really important to get a source that is a soluble humic acid. So mostly it's the potassium extraction. So they solubilize it with this high basic potassium extract that then processes the Leonardite and makes it soluble. And then it's just really a highly concentrated humic acid. The CEC for most humic acids are around 300. And so you're adding exchange sites in the soil to increase nutrient uptake, uh, helps with soil buffering, helps with water holding capacity, increases cation exchange capacity and soil structure. And then also it's a food source for microbes. So you can increase your microbial populations and diversity, helps with root mass and shoot growth, and then with crop yield. And there's Clemson University has looked at it and they gave us a snippet of, they've seen positive effects with using humic acids. And then, so our humic acid is called puric. And then also, it's also really good if you feel like you don't have a very diverse microbiome within your soil to add a microbial consortium. And there are different microbial consortiums out there. Ours happens to be Nutrio Unlock, which is designed to the different bacteria. So there's 7 different species of bacteria that are within Nutrio Unlock that are designed to help mineralize nitrogen, but then also solubilize phosphorus and other benefits. And then, it's called the carbon nitrogen ratio. So along with carbon, you want nitrogen. So I just wanted to mention that we do have a new nitrogen product within Wilbur Ellis, which is called Benverio Terralux, and it is a truly ammonium nitrate, so it's 100% soluble nitrogen. It has a 0 to 1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, so it does not have any carbon. But if you need to get carbon, you have humic acids, you have dry pelleted fertilizers, you've got compost. This just kind of takes the guesswork out of when you do want to put that nitrogen. You know that this is 100% available nitrogen at the time that you are putting it out. It does not need to go through the mineralization process. So it also is kind of little bit of a shortcut, right? Of not having to go through that mineralization process. And then with the picture, it's just kind of an example of what it looks like. It's translucent, so you can actually kind of see through the product. When you pour it into a jar, it looks like, a glass of brandy or bourbon. It has that look to it. And then it also has a really light odor. So it doesn't have any type of offensive, stinky odor. So it's really easy to work with. It's a neutral pH. So it runs between 6.5 and 7.5 pH. It has a very low salt index of 39. It is derived from dairy manure. So it is a biologically derived process. It's just really, they're basically boiling the manure and they're capturing the ammonia and condensing it. So and it's LGMA compliant. So it's food safe, it's easy to handle, and it's just another option for the organic grower. And then this is a conventional trial that we did, but I put this slide in because I did want to demonstrate where when you add carbon and a microbial consortium into a soil that is not very fertile. I mean, you can see the soil here in the background where this gentleman is standing. It is decomposed granite. It's really low organic matter. It's less than 1%. It's a 0.9% organic matter, and the CEC is about 10. So it's really low organic matter, hard to hold on to nitrogen. The grower standard was like 20005 and ammonium nitrate, and then also CAN 17. But what we did was we added then our form of nitrogen and added the humic acid and the microbial consortium. And we were able to lower the nitrogen rate by 24% over the grower standard, which is significant, especially working with Ag Order 4.0, where they want you to, as a grower, reduce your nitrogen, total applied nitrogen. And then we had a 48% higher biomass, 31% increase crown circumference, 45% higher root biomass. And then we had a $1,700 return on investment. So it wasn't like we were breaking the bank to add this consortium. It was about the same price as the grower standard, but we had a $1,700 return on investment. But why I put this slide in here is when we were walking through the field, we didn't take counts, but we did notice a big difference in diamondback moth holes in the broccoli. And then also there were way fewer moths flying as we walk through the field. And I'm just going to play his testimonial here really quick. So you don't hear it from me, but you hear it from the grower.
Ranch where we did a trial comparing nitrogen usage on our grower standard side versus the products that we're using with Wilbur Ellis as the Empower, Pure Absolute, and Neutral Unlock. And we saw a really big difference here between uniformity, consistency, overall just size, the timing of harvest looks like to be about 3 to 5 days ahead of schedule compared to the grower standard. And really happy with the overall diamondback pressure comparison as well as the foliage on that product. So really excited to see what our results are going to be at harvest, but definitely thumbs up on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's just going back to, a healthier plant is going to be able to withstand and send out defense mechanism signals to say, hey, we're not open for attack. Like, go somewhere else, right? So we had less diamondback moth pressure and, the root systems were just so much bigger and the plants were just so much healthier. So again, it's going to, build a healthy soil to feed the plant, and then it will in turn, the plant will be able to withstand some of these stressors that come along with,
Hi, everybody.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Um, so it's, yeah, build a healthy soil, you get a healthy plant, and we don't have to then chase our tail and keep spraying. And, on the conventional side, growers in the Salinas Valley are spraying, 6, 8, 10 times on their broccoli, chasing after this diamondback moth. So if there's a way that we can do it nutritionally to reduce the amount of sprays that we're doing for diamondback, then, if we can reduce it down to 3 or 4 sprays, that's a huge win.
Gina, there's a question in the chat. Is
Oh,
microbial consortium referring to increased microbial activity? Could you clarify that term?
oh, so microbial consortium were just the 7 different microbes that are in that one product. That's what I was referring to as microbial consortium. Yeah. So it was just those 7 specific bacterium that are in Nutrio Unlock.
Thank you. There's a hand up. Sam, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, Gina.
Hi, Sam.
um, I always think of those like microbials as like you need more organic matter for those to latch onto. Is there some truth there where you're like adding? Sometimes I feel like
The
if you're adding
humic
those,
acid. That's why
okay,
I like to put humic acid or some type of carbon as a food source with the microbes.
so you're
Yes.
using that humic acid kind of as a replacement for organic matter is important, but if it's not available, using the humic acid for that food source for it.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. And there are others, there's the faster food sources like molasses and fish, but carbon is like it's the meat and potatoes of the food, where, say, like a molasses is a candy bar. It's really quick, right?
It
So
comes loose.
yeah, they'll
It's
burn
not
through
that
it, like with
yeah.
molasses. They'll burn through that carbon pretty fast. But with the humic acid, it's such a large carbon molecule, it takes longer for them to break it down. And it holds on to nitrogen better. It holds on to ammonia in the ammonia phase longer. So it slows that conversion to nitrate.
Huh. And then same thing with the fish, like those oils and fats are those like a
Yep.
fast
Those
one.
are,
Okay.
they're a little bit faster. Like they're not as fast as molasses, but they're kind of in between. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
So now I'm going to kind of switch gears from soil health and soil biodiversity. And now we're going to talk about above ground biodiversity because it does play hand in hand. It's like, preventative pest management, it's really below ground biodiversity and above ground biodiversity. So it's like, it's this whole complicated complex of systems, but it's like, it's the whole systems approach. So putting it all together is where we really optimize prevention for pest management. So, the picture on the left, that's driving into the Dole Ranch again, and that you look through the alyssum and the poppies, and there's also some lupin in there. The alyssum really attracts in the smaller insects because it's a smaller flower, so you're getting parasitoids. that are specific to specific leps, but also aphid. And then you're bringing in syrphid flies, ladybird beetles, anything that likes those smaller flowers. It's really important. But then also, like the poppies are bringing in the pollinators and the bumblebees and the honeybees. And so it's kind of a nice mix where you're getting the predators and the parasites, but then you're also bringing in the pollinators. And like this, you can see that there's a road on the edge, and you're driving into the field, and so you're not only benefiting, you've got habitat for all of these beneficial insects, but you're beautifying your ranch, right? Where you're not driving in and blowing dust on that first bed, but there's like a buffer bed. And I just think that where you can have a buffer bed in between a row and your first bed of crop, it's a great area to have a habitat. And then the picture on the left is just that's dill, because dill is also super attractive to beneficial insects, and that's a syrphid fly. Syrphid flies are my absolute favorite beneficial insect because they are the workhorses for aphid and other insects. Um, so why am I such a proponent for these biocontrol agents? Well, because they can be the heavy lifter when we do have issues with pests out in the field. They're easy to overlook. Sometimes they are mistaken as pests. I've gotten calls from harvest foremen saying, we've got a terrible worm outbreak out in the romaine, and I go out and look, and it's actually syrphid fly larvae, and it's like, just give it a couple days, and they're going to clean out the red aphid, and the syrphid fly will pupate and do their thing and be out of there, and then they'll leave clean, lettuce, but they can be mistaken as a worm. So that's where education comes in. Predators are generalists that attack and consume their prey. Parasitoids are target specific for specific species, and they can live on or inside the host. So here in this graphic, it's showing a parasitoid inserting its egg into the aphid, and then that egg hatches, and then it eats its way out of the aphid. And it's like Alien, right, on a microscopic level. So why do we want to have flowering habitat? Well, it increases the number and longevity and reproduction potential for the beneficial insects, because most of the adults are only pollen, which is protein, and nectar, which is carbohydrates, feeders. It's their offspring that are the prey of these insects. So we really want to grow these adults to be healthy, so then their offspring hatch out of their eggs super hungry and can consume more aphid, because the healthier they are, the more they're going to eat. And then just really important that they are sensitive to pesticide exposure, and they are sensitive to some of our organic pesticides like Entrust or Pyganic, right? Those are the broader spectrum type of pesticides that they are sensitive to. So that's why I like the strip plantings, because if you are going to go in and do some early preventative sprays, then you're not spraying the flower strip, and there is a refuge for them. And then these are just some of my pictures that I've taken over the years of examples. Up in the upper left-hand corner, this is an example of a grower who decided, instead of doing a strip spray, they're going to plant their alyssum in little blocks. And it really brings in, the beneficial insects. But in that situation, if they do go in and do a spray, they're going to spray the alyssum also. In the middle, that is a minute pirate bug, or Aureus insidious, with a immature thrip on the end of its proboscis there. So they are super aggressive eaters, they'll eat 40 thrip a day and then kill another 40 just for sport. So if we can get Aureus insidious established in our fields, they are great thrip predators. Lower left-hand corner is, of course, our ladybird beetle, and that's a lettuce aphid there, and you can see that she's cluing into that lettuce aphid. So again, ladybird beetles are great. And then I just like this picture. This was an Eric Brennan experiment where he planted buckwheat in the furrows of strawberry um, plants, and this was an overwintering cover crop that he had going. So again, great refuge for beneficial insects, and they're not going through the field at that time during the winter. So it's a great buckwheat crop that is highly attractive to beneficial insects. And then on the right there, that's a syrphid fly larva. That's why of course, you think, "Oh, that's a pest, it's a worm," but no, it's actually a true maggot from a syrphid fly. And then you can also see that there are some cabbage aphid that have been parasitoid or parasitized. And down in the lower right hand corner, you can actually see where one has eaten its where the egg is hatched and the parasitoid has gone through its life cycle inside the aphid and then cut a hole in the rear end and popped out as an adult. And that adult is going to go look for pollen and nectar to repeat its life cycle. So that's why it's so important to have this habitat on the farm so that when that next generation happens, they don't have to leave your farm to look for food. It's there on the farm. And then you can augment your biocontrol with releases. And here on the left hand, those are lacewing eggs. And so a company, I'm sure you guys have heard of Parabug. They've started here on the Central Coast. They've got, you can see in the center of the drone, that is like a shaker that rotates. You put the eggs with some rice bran, and that drone then flies and releases those eggs in the lettuce. Also, Anagyrus for vine mealybug and the coccinellid beetle for vine mealybug are being released via drone. And there are other insects that are being released via drone. And that's only really if you don't have a population of beneficials on the farm that you can, augment. Or if they are hard to build up, like the coccinellid beetle for vine mealybug, that's kind of a standard release that because it's hard to get them established early. But in my mind, plant the habitat, build it, and they will come. But if you do need to augment, it's also good to augment within that habitat. And also, I wanted to mention when you do the augmentation, make sure you're not coming in and spraying right after it because that's going to kill your beneficial insects. So now I'm going to transition over to organic pesticides because we are talking about pest management and that is kind of part of it. There are a lot of different organic pesticides on the market, but just knowing, which ones to use to target which pest and when to apply it, what is the proper product that you want to use, what's the right timing. Again, if you have a good beneficial population, do you want to come in and spray a broad spectrum organic insecticide? I really wouldn't think that you would, right? You don't want to knock that beneficial population down. Fungicides can also be detrimental depending on the type of fungicide. And then the right rate. There are new products coming on the market. There are some different peptides that are out there now that are becoming more popular, and we're trying to understand how to use them, but we're finding out higher rates of peptides can cause detrimental effects to the plant, like it overstimulates the plant. So it's knowing what rate to go at and then the placement, right? So like, is it a sprinkler applied? Is it a soil application? Do you need to do a drip application? Um, I'm really becoming an advocate of a drone application because I'm starting, I've done some trials and seen that coverage is really incredible with the drones, and you use a lot less volume of any particular product. And then also, our standard ground application. And then when is the best time to put out that application? Because some insects are more active during the day, and then, they go and hide at night. So you might have to apply during the day. But other products, say like with a fungi, like a Beauveria bassiana, you'd want to spray that at night because you want it cooler and darker, and it just keeps that spore alive longer. So, it's knowing what the product is that you're spraying, and, understanding how it works and what you want to accomplish with it. And so I just wanted to talk really quick about the foliar drone applications. So this was an experiment I did on just some newly transplanted romaine. It was more of a fertility trial, but it was wet and I couldn't get in. And that's the thing about with the drone. You don't have to worry about a tractor getting into the field. You can come in right after you've irrigated or right after a rain. But what I was really surprised about, because it was a fertility, so I threw a humic acid in with the product. I wanted to get carbon out there. And the byproduct of me doing this was I actually realized, wow, you can see the coverage because humic acids are black. So I was really surprised at the coverage that we got with the drone. And I did not put a spreader sticker in with this. This was just in water. So it was 5 gallons of water with a quart of humic acid. And this is the coverage that we got. And on that right hand picture, that is the underside of the leaves. And, in these type of foliar applications, coverage is one of our weak points, right? We don't get the product where the pest is. So I was really pleasantly surprised by the coverage under the leaf surface because that's where a lot of pests reside. So it's worth looking into. A lot of, you can set up your own drone and get a drone license and do your own applications. And then just talking about, the right organic surfactant, it's super important to understand what a surfactant does. So I have on the left here, this is a hairy leaf surface with no surfactant, and watch what happens. So it never reaches the leaf surface. So if you're doing a fungicide spray where you're trying to get that product onto the leaf surface, it might not ever reach. So on the right here is with an organosilicone spreader. So it just breaks the dyne of that surface area of that water molecule and it spreads it out. So just understand, your adjuvants and what they can do for you. And there are organic adjuvants out there. Oh, sorry. There we go. And then I know I'm like over time. So Wilbur, I work for Wilbur Ellis. We've got organic crop product guides. So if anybody wants to reach out to me and talk more about products, I can do that. Here are some of the products that we support. the little yellow dot next to the name, or those are our internal branded products. So we've got a new product called Fun Time, which is a time oil that's encapsulated with the AgroSpheres technology. So it makes it a longer residual time oil. We have T34 Biocontrol, which is a trichoderma asperillum, and then Romeo, which is the killed yeast strain. So, and then of course, good old 440 Superior Spray Oil for insecticide and fungicide. But this is just a list of organic fungicides and insecticides that are on the market, that are, have been around for a long time and have been vetted by different growers and are, part of organic growers' tools in the toolbox, right? We don't want to rely on these, but they are there when we have a problem. And, there's always going to be a problem arise because we're farming in nature and, there's no guarantee, right? And it's just like us. We stay healthy as well as we can, but if we're exposed to, the flu or some kind of virus, we get sick. So then that's when you have to kind of intervene and take some aspirin or whatever. But so this is how I look at, these organic pesticides is they are there if we need them. And then fertility management. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about rodents and, our good old barn owls and how important having raptors and owls are on the ranch to help with our rodent population. I know last year was just a terrible rodent year. So they can, be heavy lifters also if we can get them established on the farm. And then, don't overlook songbirds and bats because they also eat insects. And, songbirds eat flying insects during the day, and bats eat flying insects at night. And then just some resources if you need any resources. So our website, and then the UCANR website, which is an amazing website, and then also Wild Farm Alliance. I just love what Joanne does there. And then again, I just want to, shout out to Israel and his family, and everybody send a prayer toward them because they're suffering, but he was amazing.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much, Gina, for your wonderful presentation. I certainly learned a few new things.
Which says
And
something.
there are a few questions in the chat. So with our few remaining minutes, let's see what questions we have in the chat. So you mentioned these beneficial insect releases. What are your thoughts on ladybug releases in romaine?
So it's actually not recommended to release ladybugs because, for the most part, they're wild caught up in the Sierras, and that's not very sustainable. Um, and you can introduce a bacterium that is native to the ladybugs up in the Sierras into our native population here on the coast or within the lowlands of California. Um, and then they're not immune to that bacterium that's native for the Sierra ladybugs. So it really isn't recommended to release wild-caught ladybugs.
Thank you. Do you have any organic pesticides recommended for thrips?
That's a tough one, right? Thrip are really, really hard. And and trust is probably the probably the best, but I know resistance is becoming a big issue with the spinosids. Wrath is one that we're looking at now. That's a geraniol oil. It's a lot less expensive than Entrust. And so maybe you can come in and do some back-to-back applications with Wrath. But again, it is a broad spectrum, so you're going to kind of, wipe out. But I like what I see with Wrath.
Thank you. Are there any predators for peach twig borer?
I don't know. I don't know that answer. I'm more on the vegetable side of things. But does anybody else out there have any ideas? And you know, um, reach out to either Emmy Conovan. She works with Copert, which she's a great resource. Also, Chrissy Davis with Copert. I can look into that also if I don't see who's asking the question. So
Yeah.
if you guys want to send me a message, and I could do a little investigating for you too.
Thank you, Gina. Yeah, Katie, I can send you Emmy's contact too.
You know Emmy, yeah. She's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
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 I think that's a hard one. I think peach twig borer, that's going to be a hard one. Yeah.
Sluggo is an organic certified slug snail controller. Are there any health or environmental hazards in it?
Um, well, Sluggo is iron phosphate, and then it also has spinosad in it, right? I think it's got spinosad. So it or I guess that would be bug and sluggo. So there's two. So there's bug and sluggo that has spinosad and the iron phosphate. And then sluggo is just iron phosphate. So I would say just sluggo with the iron phosphate. That no, I don't think there would be any detrimental issues there. With the bug and sluggo, with the spinosad, it's more broad spectrum. So if you have, rove beetles or, any of the beneficial insects in the soil that run across it, they would be affected by it.
Thank you. Uh, the list of all the organic uh, pesticides, is that available online or in an electronic format?
If you reach out to me, I could send an electronic format.
Thank you, Gina. Any thoughts on dealing with blight on celery? We've inspected seed.
Oh, so my go-to for blight on celery is Nordox, so copper. But I like Nordox as the copper, but it does have a red residue. So use it early, right when you see the blight. But it works pretty darn good. And then again, have a good spreader in there because you want that copper to spread over the leaf surface. But yeah, I really like Nordox for blight.
Did someone have a question, or I heard someone come unmuted?
A question
Are
about the
surfactants,
to-do.
oh, are surfactants recommended with microbial products?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, like a Beauveria bassiana, you want to keep it wetter longer. So like an organosilicone spreader will help keep that leaf surface wetter longer.
Okay. Do you have any information on seduce bait?
So that's spinosad, right?
Mhm.
So again, it's a broad spectrum. And they put an attractant in it. So you will be attracting more of the broad spectrum insects. It's not specific. It's not a targeted insecticide. It's a broad spectrum.
And have you seen it work well for like darkling beetles or other
It does. I mean, it
ground
does
dwelling?
work. Yeah, it does work. Yep.
Mhm. Great. Well, we got through all the questions in the chat and it's
Oh.
12:59. Any last minute questions? You can unmute yourself.
And I put my email here so anyone can reach out to me if you have any further questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Aparna, for launching the poll. We always really appreciate hearing about whether you learned anything in our seminars, and we love hearing about what seminars you would like to have or people you want us to host. So please send us your ideas and your needs. And Gina, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your 3 decades worth of experience. We certainly don't have enough time to cover all that you have to share. But this was a really wonderful 1 hour seminar.
Well,
So
thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite.
you're welcome.
This is, Israel wants to spread the word on this, and it's like, that it's part of my mission.
Being a part of that. Thank you. Well, and everybody here showed up to learn more. So thank you all for coming. And we record these. We will share just the presentation part, not the discussion. So you're always invited and encouraged to come in person so you can ask your questions and be a part of the discussion. And as I mentioned, irrigation next week. And in the meantime, take care, everybody. Be well. Enjoy the beautiful winter. And we will hope to see you next week or in future seminars.